My wife hid her affair with her gym trainer. For months, so I hired a PI, got proof, and handed divorce papers mid-reunion dinner in front of all. I'm a 34-year-old man, and if you'd asked me a year ago, I would have sworn my marriage was solid. Sure, we had our ups and downs, but I believed we were strong enough to get through anything. At least, that's what I told myself whenever I noticed the little changes in her. It started with the gym. My wife had never been the type to obsess over fitness, but suddenly she was going 4, sometimes 5 times a week. She'd come home later than usual, flushed and energized, her phone buzzing with messages she never let me see. At first I brushed it off as harmless. She's just bettering herself, I thought. But deep down something felt off. One night while she was in the shower, I noticed her gym bag tossed on the chair. It was packed neatly, almost like she was preparing for a trip rather than just a workout. A strange, unfamiliar scent, something musky and sharp, lingered on her clothes. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to push the thought away. "Babe, you're spending a lot of time at the gym lately," I casually mentioned one evening as she scrolled through her phone. She barely looked up. "Yeah, I'm just trying to take care of myself. Don't you want me to be healthy?" Her tone carried an edge, like I was accusing her of something. I smiled weakly and nodded, but inside I felt a flicker of unease. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her, but that sinking feeling in my gut wouldn't leave. That was the first time the thought crossed my mind. What if she wasn't just working out? The weeks that followed only made that gut feeling louder. She started turning down intimacy, claiming she was too tired after her workouts. The woman who used to curl up next to me in bed now rolled over with her back to me, clutching her phone like it was more comforting than my arms ever were. I tried to shake it off, but then friends started making comments. At a dinner party, one of her girlfriends laughed and said, "You're glowing lately. Must be all that gym energy, huh?" My wife's cheeks flushed and she brushed it off, but I couldn't ignore the way she smiled, like she was hiding a secret. I decided to talk to her directly. One night, while she was wiping off her makeup in the bathroom, I leaned against the doorframe and said, "Listen, you've seemed different, distant. Is everything okay between us?" She glanced at me through the mirror, her eyes narrowing just slightly. "You're imagining things. Honestly, you're starting to sound insecure. Can't you just be happy for me?" Her words cut deeper than I expected. Insecure? I wasn't the one staying out late or glued to my phone, but her tone, sharp and dismissive, made me back off. I muttered a quiet, "Yeah, maybe you're right," even though my chest felt heavy with doubt. The more I tried to get close, the more walls she built. She stopped sharing details about her day, offering vague answers like, "Just the usual," or "Nothing important." She started showering at odd times, right after getting home. Like she was washing something away. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to her softly tapping on her phone. And each night, the silence between us grew wider, until it felt like we weren't even living in the same marriage anymore. Something was wrong. Very wrong. And deep down, I knew it wasn't just in my head. The first time I heard his name, it was casual. Too casual. She walked in one evening, sweaty from the gym, and dropped her bag by the door. "Ugh, Marcus killed me today," she laughed, collapsing onto the couch. "Marcus?" I asked, trying to sound relaxed. "My trainer," she replied quickly, grabbing her water bottle. "He pushes me hard, but it's working. Don't you think I look stronger?" I forced a smile and nodded, but inside something tightened. Over the next few weeks, Marcus's name slipped into more and more conversations. "Marcus says my form is getting better. Marcus recommended this protein shake." Always Marcus. It felt like he'd moved into our house without ever stepping through the door. Then came the texts. I'd notice her phone lighting up with messages while she cooked, and though she'd swipe them away fast, I caught glimpses of his name. She'd laugh softly at whatever he wrote, a laugh she hadn't given me in months. One night, she came home unusually late, claiming her session ran over. When she leaned in to kiss me, I smelled it again, that musky cologne that wasn't mine. It clung to her skin, sharp and undeniable. "Long night?" I asked, forcing my tone light. "Yeah, Marcus really had us doing overtime drills," she said. tossing her hair like it was nothing. But I couldn't ignore it anymore. Marcus wasn't just her trainer. He was a shadow between us, always present, always closer than I could be. As I lay in bed that night, watching her fall asleep with her phone under her pillow, I realized something had shifted. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was the first flicker of certainty, and certainty is far more terrifying than doubt. By this point, every part of my day revolved around noticing her patterns. I'd watch the clock when she left for the gym, then stare at the door, waiting for her to come back. Some nights she'd stroll in 2 hours later, sweaty but smiling, and brush off my questions with, "Traffic was crazy." I started checking the little things. Her gym bag was heavier than usual, like it carried more than workout gear. Her phone was always face down, always locked, always buzzing. One evening while she showered, I picked it up, heart pounding, hoping to find the truth. But everything had been wiped. No texts, no calls, nothing suspicious. That emptiness told me more than any message could. She wasn't careless. She was covering her tracks. I became obsessed. At work, I'd catch myself replaying conversations, analyzing every smile, every excuse. Friends asked if I was okay, and I'd force a laugh, saying I was just tired. But the truth was, I was unraveling. I was living in my own house like a stranger, studying my wife like she was a puzzle I couldn't solve. One night I tried again to breach the subject. "You've been going to the gym a lot. Are you sure everything's okay?" She snapped her head up from her phone, eyes narrowing. "Why do you keep asking me that? Do you not trust me?" Her sharpness stung. "It's not that," I began, but she cut me off. "You're paranoid. I can't live like this, with you questioning me all the time." And just like that, she stormed off to bed, leaving me alone in the living room, my chest tight and my fists clenched. Her words echoed in my head. Maybe I was paranoid. But if that was true, why did her lies feel so real? The breaking point came late one Friday night. She'd told me she was staying late for an extra session, but when I called the gym just to check, the front desk casually said, "Oh, the trainer's wrapped up hours ago." My blood ran cold. She came home 2 hours later, humming like nothing was wrong, her hair damp from a shower she clearly hadn't taken at home. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, listening to her breathe peacefully beside me while my mind raced. I realized I couldn't keep guessing anymore. I needed proof. Not suspicions, not gut feelings. Proof. The next morning, I called a private investigator. My voice shook as I explained, "I think my wife is cheating. She's at the gym all the time with this trainer, and nothing adds up." The man on the other end was calm, almost clinical. "Sir, I'll be honest with you. If she's hiding something, we'll find it. But you need to be prepared for what you might see. Sometimes the truth is harder than the suspicion." Those words stuck with me. Did I really want the truth? A part of me hoped he'd come back with nothing, that I'd be proven wrong, and I'd just look like a jealous fool. But the larger part, the hollow, aching part of me, already knew what was coming. Over the next week, I tried to act normal. I kissed her goodbye when she left, forced myself to smile when she texted about grabbing smoothies after training. All the while, my stomach twisted as I waited for the PI's call. Every night felt like the moment before a bomb goes off. Silent, tense, unbearable. And when my phone finally buzzed with his number, I knew my life was about to change forever. When I answered the PI's call, my throat was so dry I could barely get a word out. He didn't waste time. "I've got what you asked for. We need to meet." Sitting in his small office a few hours later, I felt like my skin was buzzing. He slid an envelope across the desk, his expression unreadable. "I'll let the photos do the talking." My hands trembled as I opened it. The first picture nearly knocked the air out of me. My wife and Marcus, her trainer, locked in a kiss in the parking lot of the gym. My vision blurred, and I had to grip the table just to steady myself. But it didn't stop there. The photos showed them meeting outside the gym, slipping into a car together. Then the hotel receipts, dates, times, charges for executive suites. There were even screenshots of texts the PI had managed to pull from her cloud backups. "Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you. Wish I could fall asleep in your arms every night. It was worse than I had imagined." This wasn't a fling. This was a relationship. She had built an entire second life with him, while I was still trying to convince myself she just liked protein shakes and squats. I couldn't breathe. I remember whispering, "How long?" The PI shrugged. "From what I can tell, at least 6 months, maybe longer, 6 months. Half a year of lies, of slipping into bed next to me after being with him. Half a year of telling me I was paranoid while she was deleting messages and sneaking showers. I drove home in a haze, the envelope heavy on the passenger seat. She was already there, humming as she chopped vegetables for dinner, like nothing was wrong. I looked at her, smiling like a perfect wife, and for the first time, I didn't see the woman I married. I saw a stranger, and in that moment I knew our marriage was already over. That night, I sat at the dinner table watching her laugh at some cooking show while we ate. The photos and receipts from the PI felt like they were burning a hole in my pocket. Every fiber of me wanted to slam them on the table and scream, "I know everything!" But something stopped me. Instead, I tested the waters. "So, how was the gym today?" I asked, stabbing at my food a little too hard. She didn't even blink. "Exhausting. Marcus really pushed us. My legs are killing me." She gave a casual laugh, as if she hadn't just spent the night with him. I studied her face. Smooth, unbothered, almost rehearsed. If I hadn't seen the proof with my own eyes, I might have believed her. But that calm smile, that was the smile of someone who thought she had me completely fooled. "Maybe you should take a day off," I suggested carefully. She shook her head quickly. No, I can't lose progress. Besides, Marcus says consistency is key." Hearing his name from her lips made my stomach turn. I forced a weak smile, but my hands curled into fists under the table. When she excused herself to take a quick shower, I sat there in silence, listening to the water run, imagining him touching her the same way I used to. Rage coursed through me, but I bit it back. I realized then that confronting her right away would give her control of the narrative. She'd twist it, deny it, maybe even gaslight me again. No, if this was going to end, it had to end on my terms. So I stayed quiet, burying my fury deep, even as it tore me apart from the inside. Silence became my prison. Days blurred together as I carried the weight of her betrayal alone, pretending everything was normal while my insides rotted. At work, I stared blankly at my computer screen, barely processing emails. At home, I'd sit on the couch, watching her text with her phone tilted away from me, her lips curling into secret smiles that weren't mine. I stopped eating much. I stopped sleeping. Nights were the worst. I'd lie awake beside her, staring at the ceiling, imagining her slipping into someone else's arms. My chest felt hollow, my thoughts dark. The woman who once made me feel like I mattered now made me feel invisible. One night, I broke. I sat in the kitchen at 3 a.m., my head in my hands, the PI's envelope spread across the table. I stared at the photos until the tears finally came. I hadn't cried in years, but they poured out of me in shaking waves. When she walked in to grab water, I panicked and shoved the papers back into the folder. She looked at me with tired eyes. "Why are you still up?" I forced a smile through the raw ache in my throat. "Couldn't sleep." "Work stress," she shrugged, grabbed her glass, and went back to bed without another word. And that moment, was my lowest. I realized I was a ghost in my own home, sitting in the ruins of a marriage that only I was still pretending to hold together. For the first time, I thought, maybe I'm the fool here. Maybe I deserve this for being too blind to see it sooner. But somewhere buried under the pain, a different thought whispered, "You can't stay here forever. Something has to change." After that night in the kitchen, something inside me hardened. The tears dried, and in their place grew a cold determination. I realized I had two choices: keep drowning in her lies, or rise up and take control of my own ending. I started paying attention differently, not to catch her anymore, but to prepare. I memorized her routines, noted her excuses, and smiled when she thought she was outsmarting me. It was like playing chess against someone who didn't even know I'd already seen their entire playbook. That's when the idea came to me. A quiet, devastating form of justice. She wanted to play perfect wife in front of her family, always making sure they saw our marriage as flawless. Fine. I'd give her the performance she wanted, only I'd be the one writing the final act. I waited for the perfect opportunity. And it came sooner than expected, a family reunion dinner. Her parents, her siblings, some close friends, everyone whose opinion she cared about would be there. She had been excited about it for weeks, talking about how she wanted us to show up as the power couple. The irony made me laugh bitterly in private. She had no idea I was planning to bring the truth to that very table. Quietly, I gathered everything the PI had given me, photos, receipts, texts, and slipped them into a neat folder. Then I called my lawyer. Divorce papers were drawn up, signed, sealed, waiting for her name. I kept my mask on, affectionate enough not to arouse suspicion. But underneath, every glance I gave her was a countdown. She thought she was in control. But the truth was, the game was already over, and she was about to find out, publicly. The night of the reunion arrived, and she was practically glowing. She twirled in front of the mirror, smoothing the fabric of her dress, and asked, "Do I look good enough to impress my parents tonight?" I forced a smile. "You look perfect." She kissed my cheek lightly, oblivious to the fact that I already knew whose approval she really craved when she dressed up these days. Still, I played the part of the supportive husband. I drove us to the restaurant, held her hand as we walked in, even pulled out her chair. The mask was flawless. Her family welcomed us warmly. Her mother beamed at her. Her father clapped me on the shoulder. For a brief moment, it almost felt normal, like the betrayal wasn't sitting in my pocket in the form of divorce papers and incriminating photos. She thrived in the spotlight, laughing too loudly, telling everyone how incredible our marriage was. "He's been so patient with me," she bragged, touching my arm. "I don't know what I'd do without him." Each word dripped with hypocrisy, and yet the table ate it up. Her siblings nodded, her parents smiled proudly, and me? I stayed calm, sipping my drink, nodding at all the right times. Inside, though, my chest was pounding. The evidence folder pressed against my jacket. A ticking bomb waiting for me to drop it in the middle of their perfect little dinner. I glanced around the table, at the faces so convinced of her innocence, and felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. They were about to see who she really was. The lies, the betrayal, all of it. She leaned in to whisper, "See? They adore us!" "Tonight's going to be perfect." I smiled back, but in my mind I knew, perfect for me maybe. Not for her, the timing had to be flawless. I waited until dinner plates were cleared and wine glasses refilled. The table buzzed with chatter, laughter, the clinking of silverware. She sat across from me, radiant, soaking in every ounce of admiration from her family. I placed my fork down, leaned back slightly, and cleared my throat. The room quieted, curious eyes turning to me. My wife smiled at me expectantly, probably thinking I was about to toast her in front of everyone. Instead, I pulled the folder from my jacket and set it gently on the table. "I have something to share," I began, my voice steady, though my hands trembled under the surface. Her smile faltered. What's that?" I opened the folder and spread the contents across the table. Photographs of her and Marcus kissing, the hotel receipts, the printed texts. The room fell silent, the kind of silence that crushes the air out of your lungs. Her father's face paled. Her mother's fork clattered onto her plate. Her siblings leaned in, eyes wide. She reached for the papers, stammering, This is fake. He's making this up!" I met her eyes, cold and unflinching. "It's not fake. I hired a PI. This is your reality. And this," I pulled out the divorce papers, sliding them across to her, "is mine." Gasps circled the table. Her mother whispered her name like a prayer. Her father shook his head, disappointment heavy in his eyes. She tried to speak again, but no words came out. Just a trembling lip, a face stripped of its mask. I stood, buttoning my jacket with deliberate calm. "You wanted to play the perfect wife in front of your family. Now they know the truth. Enjoy your dinner." And with that, I walked out, leaving her drowning in the silence she had created. The night air hit me like a wave of freedom as I stepped out of that restaurant. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding, but for the first time in months, I felt light. I didn't need to yell, didn't need to beg. The truth had spoken louder than anything I could have said. My phone buzzed before I even reached my car. Her name lit up the screen, call after call, text after text. Please, let's talk. You're humiliating me. I can explain. I turned it off without replying. She had explained enough with her lies. The days that followed were a blur of paperwork and finality. Her family tried reaching out, apologizing for her actions, some even thanking me for showing them the truth. I accepted their words, but I didn't linger. My focus wasn't on fixing their perception. It was on fixing myself. At night, I no longer stared at the ceiling, waiting for her to come home. The bed felt empty, yes, but it also felt honest. No more lies sleeping beside me. No more pretending everything was fine when my world was crumbling. People ask me if I regret exposing her in front of everyone. The truth? Not for a second. She had paraded around, playing the role of a devoted wife, while I lived in the shadows of her betrayal. That night I flipped the script. She wanted an audience, and I gave her one. Now I'm moving forward, not with anger, but with clarity. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't screaming or fighting or even destroying someone's reputation. It's choosing yourself. It's walking away with your head held high while they sit in the wreckage they created, and that's exactly what I did.